the morning sunrise. In Lions Gate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air. In Lions Gate, the fair.
To the cloud.
And
And it is recording.
my cue. Welcome to Lions Den 17. Lady Aoife has been performing for much of her life and is professionally a musician and entertainer. Although she is new-ish to the barony, she was Lionsgate Bardic champion in 2018 before she received her Award of Arms the following year, the same day that she became Baroness Ariana's Inspiration of Bardic. She has entertained us at our fire many a night. She had a particularly memorable Bardic competition involving a spinning wheel with random outcomes for the topic of your Bardic at Lion's War. She and her family are a true delight, and we are thrilled to have her here to talk with us. There you go.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. So, basic Bardic for beginners is what we are talking about this evening. It's sort of just a tool to demystify the whole concept of Bardic in general within the SCA community, and with specific emphasis on the performance aspect, because I think there's a lot of people out there who really want to do this, but they just don't know how to get into it, or what's expected of them, or basically just like it feels too foreign. So my whole job here today is to share my insights from both my observations of how Bardic circles have worked in the events that I've attended, also other Bardic capacities such as competition, and what ways we can use the Bardic platform within that context. So I'm going to just scoot over to my notes here. So if I look a little bit bleary-eyed, it's because I'm reading off a page. One thing that it is a common misconception is that the role of the bard is some kind of lofty, unattainable apex position, and can only be accessed by seasoned performers, expert singers, expert actors, people who have a lot of background. The point is that it is actually more fun when people of broad spectrum talents and interests get together to put together a more extempore project, such as a Bardic Circle. It's kind of like, I kind of relate it to like karaoke night. You know that at karaoke night, there's not a whole lot of talent exposed, but because people are mostly in their cups and a little bit less inhibited, it's a great time, even if they're horrible. It's kind of like that for Bardic, but slightly less so, depending on the Bardic circle we're talking about. In fact, it's very often a lot like karaoke later in the evening. Bardic has many facets. It can be very highbrow, can be very well researched, it can be more formal, all the way down to deep in the gutter with alcohol involved. And there's every level in between. There's all different sorts of Bardic. Opportunities can be found or created to elevate any event, so long as there are bards around to make it happen. And oftentimes, the Bardic component to events get overlooked. And that's no fault of the event coordinators or anything. It's just, it's not high priority in certain times. So, you know, if there isn't an official Bardic event planned, there's no harm in getting together with a bunch of people and making one happen. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about performance techniques. If you're drawn to Bardic, there's a chance that you have had some kind of experience in performance of some description, whether it's high school drama, or whether you sang in a choir, or even doing storytelling. Having this advantage will serve you, but it's not necessary to being an accomplished bard. So here are a few basic tips to ensure that you come across as confident and prepared. I'm not talking about talent at this point. We're just talking about feeling into it, getting yourself ready. First of all, breathe. And I know it sounds super cliche, but breathing is so key. I myself am really terrible because I will practically pass out if I'm nervous, and I'll be like, I'm gonna tell a story or whatever. If I'm not ready and I haven't breathed, I know that I'm not going to do as well as I could. Second of all, and this is a point that I'm going to come across a few times, do not begin your presentation with an apology. There's so many people that defeat themselves before they even begin. Just be grateful and positive, and your whole tone will be elevated for yourself and for the audience. And I am going to get back to this later on in the talk, but it's so disheartening when someone comes up and starts by saying, I'm really sorry, I'm a bad singer, I haven't practiced, I'm super nervous. It just kind of takes the tone right down. Don't apologize, just go forward and do it. Take your time. So you know your piece, even you have a relationship with the piece that you're presenting. And sometimes there's an urge to just kind of bomb through it because you know it by heart. But the truth is, if you just take a minute and just kind of allow the pace to settle a little bit, it allows your audience to savor all the hard work that you put into it, and they will understand better what you're trying to portray. Knowing your material, it can be so scary to come up unprepared, especially if there are questions at the end. In the case of a competition format, there will usually be a Q&A after the actual performance is done. So do your diligence, learn about the pieces you present, even if it's just a couple of information bits about the kind of presentation that you're doing, whatever you've got. If it's in a language or a dialect that is unfamiliar, make sure you research how to deliver it and the pronunciation, because it makes absolute load of difference. And finally, end your presentation with gracefully. Don't be just like, and that's it, that's me, I'm done. You worked really hard on this thing. Don't diminish it with a blunt ending. Just a little bow, a little grace makes a huge difference as well. So that being said, and I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really just being prepared, relaxing into it, and begin and end with a certain amount of grace. Now moving into the do's and don'ts of the Bardic Circle, kind of following on what I've just been speaking of. So do know your piece well enough to make it entertaining. If you need to have it written down, by all means. I'm really bad at memorizing things, so I always have my little book with me, even if it's just as a crutch. It's okay. No one's going to fault you for it. If it's a more formal setting and you're supposed to have it memorized, that's another thing entirely, but it's all right to have something in your hands. If you make a mistake, do not stop. Often the audience won't even notice. Just, if you just plow on through, it's better than stopping and getting all flustered. Do offer respectful attention to the other performers as an audience member, even if you are not enjoying their piece. That's not their problem, that's your problem. Do not practice your piece or sing over the person who has the floor. It's tempting to do so, but it's really important that the person who is presenting gets full and unadulterated attention. Do try and offer at least one piece, even if it's the same one you do every single Bardic Circle. Have a party piece to present, and that way, if you're called upon, you have something that you're able to put forward. Do not hog the floor. Do have a variety of styles to share as they add spice to your performance. And that's going forward, if you have your one party piece that you're comfortable with, great. But as you go along and you gain more confidence, you're going to want to maybe try some new things. So for example, have a poem in your wheelhouse, have a short story in your wheelhouse, have a good song, have something that the audience can participate in, various things like that. sorry, lost my spot. Do not weigh down the circle with too many angry or heavy pieces. Absolutely, a little bit of maudlin goes a long way. And being an Irish woman myself, yes, you can absolutely do sad or heavy or angry pieces, but don't make it one upon the other, upon the other, upon the other. It's because then it just brings the whole energy down. Do encourage everyone to present without being pushy. So if you're running a Bardic circle, it's good to make everyone feel welcome and feel heard and feel encouraged to present. If they're really, really keen on passing, it's fine. Let them pass. It's okay. They may feel up to it later on down the road. Do not judge people's presentations harshly. That speaks for itself. You wouldn't want anybody judging you harshly, and it's not always about the talent. And so, in the Bardic circle, everything goes. Understand that we are all amateurs, and once again, do not apologize for your work. Right. Moving right along. Knowing your audience. So as I was mentioning, it's always a good idea to have a variety of styles in your repertoire, especially going forward. As if you're really getting into it, it's great to just make sure you have different styles for different events. For example, if you're called up in court and make a presentation, you're not going to want to sing a naughty drinking song, for example. When you arrive at a Bardic circle, competition, court, or campfire, you have a look around at the people in attendance. Are there children? Is there drinking involved? Is the audience relaxed, or are they getting a bit squirmy? What is it that you can present to complement or dispel the energy? That's part of the job of the bard, is to elevate a situation and inspire people. Our prime objective as bards is to set a tone and to entertain. So we must read our audience best to serve that purpose. It's not, in certain capacity, it's not about us as bards. It's about the role that we present, the role that we fulfill. So once we've got our audience engaged, let's talk a little bit about audience participation. Occasionally, and it happens and it's normal, the audience will start to drift. People are getting tired. Perhaps they're having a few more drinks than is recommended. Maybe they're just bored. Maybe it's been a really long, hot day and they just kind of getting a little squishy. This is the perfect time for a participatory piece. Rounds are a real good, easy way. A lot of people learn rounds at various events. It's just kind of like an easy in because they're easy to remember and they're satisfying. So it's good to have sort of the popular ones tucked away in the back of your mind, so that if you need to teach them on the fly, or if people know them already, then perfect. Many ballads have a repeating refrain that is easy for the audience to pick up. So you just start your ballad, and oftentimes ballads can run on for a little time, but it's a story, so it engages the people and it keeps them into it whenever there's like a repeating refrain. It's a really good idea to encourage people not to listen passively, but to join in whenever it's appropriate. So even like adding a clapping bit. There's some wonderful guided drama activities, theater sports, up on your feet kind of stuff that really shake it up in a Bardic fire. If we have story after story after story, it can get really tired. So add a little action to the story, narrate some improvised theatrics, and it's great fun and it's very silly. Nothing has to be complicated, and it's actually best to be easy as possible, and so there's no pressure, and it's just a very fun and can be very silly and funny alternative to songs and stories. I am just going to now I'm switching back so I can see everybody again. Is there any questions at this stage in the game? I'm kind of like powering on through and I don't want to miss anything. Is there anybody with thoughts or questions at this stage? Give us a little winky dinkle. No? I mean, most of you speaking here, I'm speaking to here, most of you I've seen perform just fine. So you know, I'm sure you all know what you're about. And yeah, where is Loki when you need him? No kidding. That was epic. That was theatrical history being made.
I'd like to share one of my mistakes
Okay.
from a long time ago. I think this might be even before Tanique's time. I got up to perform at May Bardic. We didn't have the circles the way they are set up now, but I got up to sing, and it was as if I could see the piece I was going to do as it was on an overhead projection between me and the audience. Everything but the first line.
Oh shoot. I know that feeling.
And I got up there and I took a breath and then I let it out and I said, I was going to sing this for you, but I can't remember the first line, so you're going to get this instead. And then I performed another piece.
At least
But
you had
it
that.
You know, like,
Oh my gosh, dumb stuff like that happens to me all the time because, like I said, I don't memorize lines very well.
and this was a piece that I had memorized because it was one of my performance pieces from music college.
right.
Oh yeah, I know
And it
this
just
piece
went-
really well, but it was gone except for the first line.
Well, that's where it's very good to have backup piece, right?
Yeah.
It's really good to have that sort of backup plan.
Yeah,
Thank
plan
you.
B.
Thank you, Aoife. That's very kind of you. Okay, I'm going to proceed. So, going into now, okay, choice of material. So this is following a little bit on the audience participation thing and knowing your audience. So there's several schools of thought on period accuracy. One can debate long and hard within the Bardic world. We are naturally a medieval recreation society, and period accuracy is important to a lot of people. I really respect that, and varying communities have varying gauges of what's acceptable for PA. It must be said, however, while period accuracy is a high consideration, it must not become a deterrent to anyone who has the urge to try Bardic. There's a place and a time for all styles, in my humble opinion, and one should not feel limited when one feels inspired. For example, there's a lovely gentleman over in Hartwood, and he sings Australian campfire songs, and they're fantastic, and everyone gets into it, and it's perfectly fine. Because in the Bardic Circle capacity, it's nothing but just a good old time for everybody. Obviously one wouldn't do that for a competition or a more formal occasion, but it is important to be said that in a Bardic circle, a Bardic fire, people can loosen their ties a little bit and do something outside of period. Guys, I'm doing a presentation. Bye. Sorry about that. So the one place that period accuracy is absolutely essential is in a formal setting such as a court or in a competition setting. Obviously, you want to have your research done. You want to be able to speak at length about the period piece that you're sharing. And that is where the research and performance style should be more refined and documentable, if not already documented. Bardic fires are more loose, more comfortable, nearly anything goes. There will come a point in the evening where things devolve into either naughty lyrics or a ukulele-based Coldplay cover, and that's fine if that's just where everyone ends up naturally going. So yeah, it just, again, depending on where you are and how you're performing, but if it's a Bardic fire, it's super loosey-goosey. If it's in competition or court, you're going to want to dial it up and be as period accurate as you possibly can. Finding and researching material is quite unique in the Bardic world. Music is such an evolutionary medium, so it can be really hard to get down to the basics unless you have a document that says this is a 13th century church song written by this certain monk in this certain abbey. It's something that, you know, you may find that a sea shanty is way older than you think it is, or you may find that something like a piece of Celtic music is, you know, only 50 years old. It's really, really tricky. So where does one even begin with this? Fortunately, there's so much on the internet as far as finding songs to perform, to enjoy. It's really helpful to look for other bards, other SCA bards on YouTube to see what they have in their repertoire. Look up medieval music on whatever streaming service that you might have. There's a lot to work with on there. There's a lot of very wonderful recreationist music groups that have albums out, so that's really helpful. The trick is finding the historically accurate and documentable pieces. And it's really important to read the commentary on YouTube videos so that, because it will often give you a clue as to the accuracy of the piece or a little bit of the history of the piece, even just in a direction to follow. Other resources are traditional folk groups, such as like Steel Eye Span or the John Renbourn group from the 70s. It was quite a trend of like the Renaissance regurgitation in the late 70s. There's anthologies of traditional music, such as the Child Ballads, which were documented after period, so after the early 1600s, but a lot of them lead back into period pieces. Modern groups who do recreations of old materials, such as Medieval Babes, which is one of my favorite resources personally. And from there, there's often a trip to the library, see if you can find the origins of the piece. Super helpful if you have a university library membership. It is not easy to document traditional music, but when you get it, it's really satisfying because you know you've dug sort of the very deepest level of the origins of a good song. Now, we will talk about original composition. It is always a thrill. I do not write music myself. I have tried. It always ends up sounding like other people's work. So for myself personally, it is always a thrill when a bard presents an original work. Original pieces can be presented as period appropriate when within a formal setting. So for example, I saw one of my colleagues present a piece that they had written themselves, but it was in an extremely traditional manner. And so it sounded like it came right out of the 14th century. Very awesome. So as long as the style fits extant formulas and the style has been researched, original pieces can be presented in that capacity. Original material spans a broad spectrum of styles, from music to poetry to drama to song. Half original material, such as the period accurate art of the filk, personal favorite of mine, is another fun and acceptable way to add your own voice to a performance piece. So speaking on filk, filk is the time-honored practice of taking a well-known melody from somebody else and writing your own lyrics. Weird Al Yankovic is an excellent modern example of this. It's considered by some to be a bit of a lowbrow art form, and in certain capacities is not always recommended for competitions, for example, but it is a well-loved component of Bardic circles, and there are some memorable ones that get sung at every Bardic circle, and people get right into it. They're like, sing the rooster song! And people are so excited about it. It is also a really good way for the melodically challenged to write a relevant song for events. Myself included. As I said, I have real trouble writing my own music, but I had a lot of fun changing lyrics to suit the appropriate event. And people usually find it amusing and clever if it's well done. So,
I can put in one other style that you get at a Bardic circle is pieces in modern style, modern folk, modern whatever, but written about SCA events.
Right. And that,
so
that
not a filk, it's an original composition.
Yes.
But it's not done in period style, and it's just as just as important because it's our history.
Absolutely. I totally agree with, and that I sort of kind of touched on that. I think I was more focused on the period style of
Yeah.
original piece, but you're absolutely right. Like if it's a more modern style, that's totally acceptable in, especially in the context of a Bardic fire or in a
Burden of the Crown is a classic example of that.
terrific piece. Love that one. Yeah, thanks for putting that in there. That appreciate that. Good. All right. So, other than the Bardic Fire, what do we do? Competition and accolades. So, there are a number of opportunities to further oneself within the SCA and the Bardic medium. So, if your wish is to be awarded accolades and titles, there is a number of ways one can accomplish this as a bard. So, there are 3 levels of competition that bards can challenge. It is recommended that for new bards, the competition should be challenged in order, but it is not a hard and fast rule. So, for example, if Principality Bardic competition's coming up and you have confidence and you think that you can wing it, or not wing it, that's not the right correct word, more like you think you can challenge it even if you're new and you haven't done other accolades, there's no reason you shouldn't try. But sometimes it's better to start on the baronial level and work your way up, just so that you can learn about what you're doing. I certainly found it incredibly helpful. I got my Bardic championship at my first full event at LionsGate. I didn't actually realize it was a competition. I thought it was just like a showcase of here's what I can do. Anywho, so that happened, but I learned so much in that year, and I think everyone should give it a try. I don't think it's something that anyone should be afraid of. So the 3 levels. The levels are baronial, which is our local um, group; principality, which is sort of more of like expanded local; and then kingdom, which is the whole shebang. That's the whole kingdom of Ontir, which is humongous. Each championship comes with a set of responsibilities that the bearer must accomplish over the year that they are the champion. So one thing to be mindful of is your own availability and schedule when committing to the competition. Because if you win and you're the champion, you don't just get to strut around wearing a champion belt. You actually have to do things as the champion. Competition materials should be researched thoroughly, and the competitor should be prepared to speak at length about their piece. Um, it's such a pivotal part of the whole competition aspect. Like the performance is one thing, but really knowing what you're talking about is very critical. Judging is rigorous at any level, and the more that you know about your piece, the better the outcome will be. Um, so other accolades, such as the Award of Arms and other service awards, can be achieved by being present and visible in any capacity, as well as Bardic, for your community. And that's actually the first thing I learned myself coming in. I started with Lionsgate just going to the ANS evenings. And one of the most wise things that our host told me, and I said, because I didn't really know what to think of anything, but our host Mona told me how really critical it is to be visible. If you want to move forward in the SCA, it's good to be visible. And so helping people, interacting with people, standing up when called to stand up, doing the Bardic Circle now and again, it really does help if that is what your goal is to move forward in the community. So that's an aside. That goes into a whole other kettle of fish. Speaking of Bardic specifically, setting up Bardic circles, encouraging newbies, entertaining the nobility, teaching classes, these are all ways to use your skills as a bard outside of the performance part of it. And that is also a way to further yourself within the community. So that is the basic nuts and bolts that I have compiled of Bardic life within the SCA. Bardic is as big or as small as you wish to make it. And this is all information that is designed to offer you a sense of the scope that's available to bards in the SCA. So I encourage everyone to go forth and explore your horizons. Don't be scared. Don't feel judged. Don't feel like you're not good enough, because every single person has the capacity to be a bard in the SCA if that's what you want to do. And now, this is where I'm going to open the floor up for thoughts, comments, or questions. Yes, Kushai.
One other place that you can perform and do bardic work is just any time at an event where there's nothing happening.
Yes.
What Collegium will do is we'll sort of we'll all come in the event and we'll go in the, okay, great. We're going to set up in this corner. And when nothing's happening, we're going to play music. Just
I love that actually about Collegium. You guys, it's so nice. It's so lovely to hear you guys playing in the background.
And it was really neat because there was, when we were just starting to work on our, 12th and 13th century music, we were at an event on one of the last Eisenmark events. And we're playing, and a gentleman came by to ask us what it was we were doing. And so we explained that, this was, when was the music from, what it was, where was it from, what was it from, where did we find it? And it turns out that was his period. And it made his day.
That's so cool.
He went away going, I feel like I know more about myself now. This is the sort of stuff I would have listened to, which is sort of neat. One other thing we were saying about attributable stuff, there is an awful lot of basically period music that is, basically it's able to be quoted. You're able to say this is a proper piece of music, but it doesn't have an author. A lot of stuff does not have authors or composers. It's anonymous. But if you can say from which area, in which time period, if you can even narrow it down to which half of the century, it's perfectly valid.
Oh, I did mention that, and it's just my point was that it can be challenging to get to that grassroots level, but it's so satisfying when you can, right?
Yeah, but quite frankly, the vast majority of period music does not have a composer.
Yeah, true.
One thing I saw that Jure wrote about was the bardic job of filler. At court, I've seen it where somebody's been called and we're waiting for them to get there and a bard will fill in. One thing a bard needs to remember is they're just filling in. You don't have to finish the song. And I've seen bards make that mistake and they have to finish. They just need to finish the song. And we're all just, no, you need to stop now.
It's called find the cadence and the phrase, but
Yeah.
That is something that Jure was just saying, like, I mean, with more precise planning, that doesn't seem to happen all that much anymore, does it?
I still see it.
Yeah.
No, if the person is not there at court, and especially at a camping event.
Oh yeah.
They've got a small child, they had to take them back to clean them up for something, or they got hungry, you had to go and feed somebody.
They were there.
And they were there.
Right. They were sitting right, and it happened to me. Like, Nadezhda was princess, and she saw me sitting there and turned, and then they did the whole thing, and they called me up, and I had disappeared. And so yeah, I got yelled at for that, but I didn't know.
If he
was there a bard to fill for you though?
I don't know. I wasn't there. But yes, bards are called in to fill roles in places where, especially in court or in feasts, where you want somebody to just fill in a spot and, hey, can you do this? And as a baron or as and I've talked to princes and kings and queens and princesses before, and they know who to call on, or their herald knows who to call on, that they can put on the spot and know that it'll get handled.
Right.
The infamous bunny and duck story
Yes.
started as court filler
Is that
at
right,
the
eh?
first on to your 12th night.
Nice.
Baron Gerhard, you're a laurel, entertained the populace.
Yep.
And that's what he did. And he kept it going, saying nothing and being entertaining until whoever it was arrived. And then he said to be continued and sat down. And that's sort of it became a running gag for 25 odd years. But yeah.
Well, that sort of thing's what makes it beautiful, isn't it? Because it becomes our own culture. It's
Yeah.
not brought up from the mists of time. It's actually something that's come up from our own SCA culture, and that's as Bardic as it gets, isn't it? That's so cool. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to add to the conversation, or any questions that I may have accidentally slipped, or anything like that?
I'm going to throw this out here because this is recorded for posterity. I'm going to say going to record it. No, it is recorded for posterity. The fear of Bardic is way overblown, and I spent too many years being scared of doing Bardic before I actually did some and realized that this isn't actually that hard, and it's fun. So
it is fun. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jure, because you are an excellent performer, and and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take formal training. It just takes a little extra guts just to do that first performance, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. I know a lot of people think of me and they think of authentic period music and such, but I do have the other side of me that does do old Bardic circle songs.
Great.
And I mean, one of my favorite times is up at Clinton, the Let's Make Randall Cry. and banjo if he's there. I've got a trio of songs that they will send them off. It's great fun, and and they don't mind having it done to them. But it's a Burden of the Crown is one of them. The Champion by Edward Zifrin is another one, and Glory, that I'm not sure. I can't remember who wrote the lyrics. It was a lady down in West King, I think, but the melody is by Melissa Kendall and my mundane sister. Nice. When they were like early teens. But that trio, yes, they're all sort of sad and everything, but they talk about chivalry and the what a knight needs to be, that part of knighthood, and it will get banjo going, and it will get Randall going every time. It's so much fun. And of course, there's a lot of the other, maybe slightly out of period. Oh, and by the way, naughty, you can get away with naughty if it's in a different language.
Very true.
You can get.
I heard a wonderful Welsh song. I had no idea what it meant until the lady told me, and I was like, "Oh, gracious!"
I don't know if you heard me sing His Excellency into both his pelicaning and his knighthood with versions of the McBean chant, one in Latin, one in French. Everybody thought it was absolutely beautiful. Didn't know what it was, which is half the fun for us too. Totally. When you can pull that sort of Bardic fun.
Awesome. One thing that's always interested, one thing I've noticed, I should say, is, I mean, I've done many Bardic circles. I can get up and sing or perform or whatever. I've only done one competition, and that was just 2019, and I was so nervous. My heart was racing. I forgot half the words, and yet a week later, I was at an event and at the Bardic Circle did the same song and got it off without a hitch. And like I could have held my hand out and it would have been super steady. But at the competition, totally different.
Very true.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. It's a big ask to get Aoife into a competition again.
And even if you're an experienced performer, it will still, the nerves will rise up and bite you.
Absolutely. I've sung in front of 1,000 people, no problem. In Portuguese, no problem. Get me in front of 5 judges at a Bardic comp, I'm like, different vibe altogether. That being said, one should never be fearful of doing competition if that's what you feel called to do. It's just the caveat on the end of that one there. Anyways.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? My question is, so I started playing in the SC up north. I was a student I'm from Vancouver, but I was a student at UNBC, and sometimes some of the, especially also, which used to be a part of Abacal, some of the songs and stuff got a little borderline in terms of offensive at times, in terms of outdated language we wouldn't use anymore. Yeah. What would be your recommendation to anyone who was in the audience and heard something that really bothered them? What's something that you think that, do they have any avenue should they say something? Should they not say something? Does saying something ruin the mood?
That's a tricky one, because traditional music comes from a whole different time and wavelength and thought process. So it can be really challenging. And if
but some of it can be filks. It's not necessarily just period music.
Okay. So it's basically somebody's idea of being clever in some capacity. And yeah, that's uncomfortable. I personally haven't encountered that exactly. However, I have spoken to someone after the fact about possible content alterations. Mm-hmm. Like at the time, it wasn't something I felt. I mean, it really depends. Like if it's really super bad, I think the person running the circle would have the right to say, yeah, it's easy. This, I'm sorry, this, you've got to stop now.
Yeah.
I would do, like, for example, it was something really, really prejudiced or hurtful and really inappropriate. I would probably try and gently say, you know what, we can't have that. Yeah. If it's sort of like borderline offensive for certain people, but not like really heavy duty, perhaps I would, and that's what I did with this person. I wasn't running the circle or anything, so I didn't feel it was my place to say anything at the time. But afterwards, I was like, that was a little bit tasteless for that particular circumstance. And perhaps you might want to save that for when you're drinking with your bros, or I don't know, or just not. That's a tricky one. That's a really good question.
I also think things, people, something that you'd hear at a fire, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, wouldn't necessarily fly nowadays. And I think people are more able to advocate or feel more comfortable saying, like, that's over the line. Like, that's not
totally,
that's not cool.
Well, and there's a lot of new conversations happening within the broader SCA community, specifically with regards to that. Like, people need to feel safe. People need to feel cared for, and certainly within the SCA community, that's very relevant.
And I'm not talking about ribald lowbrow, because there's always room for lowbrow humor.
Oh God, yeah. Like everybody loves a good fart joke.
Right? Hey, we love boobs. Yeah. No,
Shakespearean.
Yes.
Shakespearean's fine.
But when it comes to being hurtful or prejudiced to people,
if you're punching down,
I feel personally like, and this is totally where this is my own opinion, but I feel like there are certain circumstances that it would certainly be appropriate to shut a person down for going there, right?
I have had that happen once.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because a lot of the fires, the Bardic fires end up happening are at my fire.
True.
If thankfully I've only had to happen. I had to do this once, but I shut a person down partway into their song,
Okay.
and it was, I mean, he's one of my clan brothers, so it was hard to do,
Hmm.
and he was angry, and he slammed his book shut, and he got up and he left, and a couple of his people left with him, and I heard later that I had been shouting at him, and, and I hadn't.
Oh boy.
Yeah, he took it way over.
Yeah.
But it was an inappropriate song, and there were children singing around the fire, and it was an extremely lowbrow army song.
Yeah.
Modern army song.
Which sort of follows back onto the know your audience thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, it was difficult, but
Yeah. Well, I think that was a good call though, and I think, you know, as I think that overall that was the right thing as the person of authority in the capacity, right? Like that's it's
now,
sucks and it's uncomfortable, but it is, I think, whether you're the resident pointy hat or you're the person running the Bardic circle, I think that's part of the responsibility of the person in that circle, or as the higher ranking individual in that capacity is to be able to make those calls, right?
yeah. It's funny you should say resident pointy hat. We had a Bardic fire, and we had a queen at our encampment, and she was sitting beside me, and she says, "Hey, I want to sing this," and she handed me her phone with the lyrics on it, and I looked at it and said, "That's probably not a good idea." And this was the queen, and I said, "Yeah, no."
Well, I can't speak for all pointy hats, okay? But there's a certain amount of responsibility involved in that capacity.
And it was not Kiva.
Wasn't it?
That time.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
If there's also, you know, if it's past 11,
Yeah.
you don't need to project as hard as you did before
Yeah.
11 p.m. He says on behalf of every event steward everywhere who's woken up at 11 p.m. going, "Oh crap, I got to go shut down the Bardic circle. They're getting loud."
Oh my god. It's
What are
true.
you talking about, Jure?
I remember I was tapped out and it was 2 a.m. and I heard people from your encampment, Your Excellency.
Me?
But I heard Cheryl singing opera. It was awesome.
Yep.
Loud.
I remember Mudlion, where I woke up. I went to bed at 9:30 because I said, I'm going to be up early. I should go to bed early. I've got a deputy. It'll be fine. And I got woken up close to midnight by the Bardic circle. One particular person at the Bardic circle who may or may not be Brianna's sister. And I actually got out of bed and was putting on socks to put on shoes when it started pouring with rain. I went, you know what? I'm going to wait 5 minutes to see if that shuts it down. And it did. It was magic. Unfortunately, it kept raining.
Well, you know. Yeah, you know, maybe the heavens heard your plea.
Yeah, unfortunately. I knew not what I asked for.
We moved the fire the next night under the Thierry Pavilion, so we wouldn't
Yes.
have that problem.
Louder and dry.
That
I think
Ariana
that's
cackling
too.
away in the background.
Maybe.
I've said too, foreign languages can cover a multitude of sins.
It's true.
Yes.
I mean, Charlotte the Harlot is a lot nicer in French.
Yes.
And in the style of the Notre Dame school.
Agreed.
I like it.
You could translate a lot of songs into period French and no one would know.
Or
At all.
Italian.
Well,
Yeah.
some people would.
Or Welsh.
A lot of people would.
Yeah.
It was my one of my little period goals was to put the McBean chant into as many styles and languages as I possibly could. I mean, it just gives itself over to a Trecento madrigal into Italian.
Yes, please.
Well, my friends, if there is no other further questions, my laptop battery is about to poop out. But is there anything else that I can wrap up with?
Been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
you
Yeah,
very
it was
much for
just wonderful.
coming in
Very
tonight.
much. I am
It's a
sorry again
fantastic
for
class.
being late, but hey, we made it happen.
And we had a good chat before you got
Yeah.
here, so it's all good.
So glad. I'm so glad. All right, my friends, I'm going to call it a night, but thank you so
Thank
much
you
again
very
for
much.
asking me to
Thank
do
you
this.
so much.
Aoife. This has been really fun.
Right.
And who knows, we'll do it another time, another kind of thing.
We're looking at doing all Bardic August.
Okay, I will
So-
start preparing.
Okay.
All Bardic August sounds great.
Yeah.
Outside in your
Bardic
backyard.
August.
With your laptop there in the backyard and a cold beer and something off the barbecue.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I will have had my injections by then, so maybe we can do something in person. Heck
Oh,
yes.
even better.
I won't.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
All right,
No matter
friends.
that I'm as old as I am now, it's probably, Curtis was just saying it's probably now September until our age group gets it. So anybody who's
Yeah.
younger than me,
Poop. All right, then. I will sing at you from a computer. Thank you, friends. Have a
Thank
lovely
you.
evening.
Thank you. Great evening.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.